their male-led counterparts. That's really sad, but also I guess that's why we are all here today. A total of 38.7% of job places that were lost were in sectors that were dominated by women, and those businesses most of those businesses that collapsed were also led by young women and young people generally. The results of this survey led the foundation to working with KEPSA again on this policy that we are launching today. So through this program, KEPSA engaged agenda specialists. I like naming names. I can see Lucy here. This is your moment, Lucy. That is the woman who burnt the midnight oil to provide gender technical support, and of course with Mucha's team to produce this. It is very important to put humanity in women's life. That young woman there was actually pregnant for the most of the time when she was drafting this policy. She took her maternity leave. But still continued supporting this process. What commitment. Thank you, Lucy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a major milestone, as the chair has said, for the private sector. I understand KEPSA is going to be celebrating her 20 years in the coming months, or 30? 3 years? In 3 years' time, KEPSA is going to turn 20. So it's really a teenager with a bit of an attitude, right? And this is a good attitude to have. So as you go into maturity, as you go into adulting, what a better way to step into that adult life than to have a policy that is going to be the star that guides, the North Star that guides your membership. And because we now have a reference point for businesses, we really do hope that all businesses will find something in it for them in this policy. I often hear people asking, like the chair has said, so what is this gender mainstreaming you're talking about, and where are you reading from? You know, we are not a gender organization. Why are you asking us to do this? So this also forestalls those questions. I remember, I mean, I think that was Judge Ruth, who said, women belong to all spaces where decisions are made. So if you're not a gender organization, look around. If you see men and women in the organization, that should answer your question as to why this policy that is launching today is going to be of interest to you. And because everything begins with an idea, I really, really want to mention here 2 women that I will remember whenever I think about this policy. Right in front of me here is Eva Muraya, and my chair at the Women on Boards Network, Catherine Musakali. You can trace our text messages. So, you know, how do we do this? How do we do this? When do we do this? And the leadership of the MasterCard Foundation that actually listened. Daniel is more than a he for she. And we are very privileged to have him leading this region for the MasterCard Foundation. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the foundation, I do really want to congratulate KEPSA for this tremendous work that you have done to get to this point. But this is just the beginning. And the benefits of this policy are going to be in the application. As I say, the test of the pudding is in the eating. So as you go to roll out this, we really look forward to seeing the various impacts that this policy that has really at the center women-led businesses and ways in which these businesses are going to be greater contributors to the Kenya's economy. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are in the continent of Africa, and Kenya has a lot of things to teach the continent. May I really encourage you to implement this, because people will show up in town. People will come to KEPSA to ask, how did you do this? So ladies and gentlemen, Thank you very much for inviting us. And at the MasterCard Foundation, I would like to really wish you great success to not only launch this and roll it out and disseminate it to your members, but implement it effectively. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, thank you. What has really come out is that, awesome, is that if your dreams do not scare you, they're not big enough. CAPSA had a vision. We needed to have a gender policy, and that's where the partners came in strongly, because we believed that that vision is bigger than CAPSA and beyond us. So we will celebrate her in a style, because we do have another partner present with us, and that is Ms. Elizabeth Obanda. Please come and speak to us. She's the team lead, Women Economic Empowerment, UN Women. Let's celebrate her as she comes.
Thank you, thank you. I don't know what to say about those steps. So, Honorable J.B. Kilimo and Honorable Rachel Shebesh, all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you. On behalf of UN Women and Ms. Anna Mutavati, who was not able to be here today, I do take note of CSW 66 priority theme, which is achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change. I also do take cognizant of the review theme, which is women's economic empowerment in the changing world of work. In the last 1 week, I was privileged to go back to my old school, and I met this awesome deputy principal who informed me that during her time, there were only 3 careers. You are either a nurse, you are a teacher, or you are a secretary. Of course, we were also wives, and that was a big one. Indeed, the world of work is changing, especially for women. Women have broken the glass ceiling. They are now presidents, they are ministers, they are IT specialists, they are everything, you name it, and women are found there. Of course, we continue to be mothers and caregivers, and we are proud of it. Even as we lament the scale of women in these careers, we must pay credence to the digital revolution that has transformed our ability to balance paid and unpaid work. Our government's commitment to global, regional, and national goals, as well as affirmative actions put in place, have made a big difference in increasing the number of women at the workplace. But as you know, we are not yet there. We know that gender equality and women's empowerment is a prerequisite for strong institutions and stable communities and economies. Investing in women's economic empowerment sets a direct path towards gender equality, inclusive economic growth, and wealth creation. Women make enormous contributions to economies, whether in business, on farms, as entrepreneurs, or employees, or by doing unpaid care work at home. And yet women remain disproportionately affected by poverty, discrimination, and exploitation. They are undervalued and experience multiple forms of violence at home and in public spaces. They often end up in secure low-wage jobs and constitute a small minority of those in senior positions. Women's inadequate presence in senior spaces limits their participation in shaping economic and social policies. But the cost of gender gap is huge. You have yourselves cited the McKinsey study, which shows that, which finds that optimal parity between men and women in the labor market, mainly through women entrepreneurship, would increase the global GDP by at least 12 trillion pounds by the year 2025. In the UN Women, together with the World Bank in the year 2015, the same year that study took place, a gender gap study was done around agricultural production. In Malawi in particular, the gender gap is costing the country $100 million annually. And if that gender gap was bridged, it would be able to lift 238,000 people out of poverty. So in the UN Women this year, we are committing to undertaking the same gender study in agriculture in Kenya, knowing that agriculture is the backbone of this economy, so that we can understand the impacts of the gender gap in agriculture. Simply by increasing women's access and control over productive assets such as agri-finance, land tenure, labor, as well as tackling traditional norms that exclude women from decision-making and limit their access to information, we would be able to bridge that gender gap, and countries that are experiencing this loss would be able to recoup or recover. And so, as far as UN Women is concerned, a progressive society that is well sensitized and socialized in raising an engendered private sector must embrace women as the solution multipliers. I take note of the leadership that KEPSA continues to provide in moving gender equality, women empowerment forward. And congratulations for the work that you have done and continue to do, and the policy that you will be launching today. So UN Women stand at the center of mobilizing governments and civil societies to keep the promise of the Beijing Platform for Action to all of society. UN Women, therefore, work to ensure that in all areas, including in the marketplace, women lead, participate in, and benefit equally from governance systems, that the women have income security, they have decent work and economic autonomy, that they live a life free from all forms of violence, and that they contribute and have greater influence in building sustainable peace and resilience. We work closely with the private sector to establish high-level corporate leadership for gender equality. We have what we call women empowerment principles. It is also a 7-point agenda, such as the one that you have. So women empowerment principles, or WEPs, as we call it in short, is our main platform globally for engaging employers. So far, globally, we have over 5,000 companies that have signed onto it. In Kenya, we have about 53 so far. And I would appeal to private sector corporations that have not signed to be part of that space, that influence, employment. So through it, we encourage employers to embrace corporate leadership for gender equality, to show no discrimination at the workplace, to pay attention to employee health and safety, to educate and train women, to develop enterprises that are gender responsive and promote women suppliers, to engage the community in advocacy for gender equality and measure and report on progress. You need to be able to hold yourself accountable. You need to be able to say, this is where we began, this is where we are going, and so far we have achieved or not achieved what we set out to do. It is not expected that one will take up all the 7 principles, but principle 1 and 2 on corporate leadership for equality and non-discrimination at work will go a long way in eliminating inequalities at work. So the other thing that UN Women is doing is working with media and big ticket advertising agencies. You spoke about Safaricom the other day being the lead brand. Safaricom is a global member of the Anti-Stereotype Alliance. And so again, I invite you to find out what this Anti-Stereotype Alliance is all about and be part of it. So we work with them so that we can alleviate or get rid of these gender stereotypes which impact upon women's agency and their ability to be able to achieve what they want to achieve. So as I wind up, let me say this, that I implore us all to increase women's and girls' educational attainment. For that contributes to women's economic empowerment, inclusive economic growth, and enables women to be part of the future of work. The kind of work that we are doing now, we'd never have thought possible then. And if we didn't go to school, we would not be part of it. So I implore everybody to please try and see and work around the issues around education. Education, upskilling, and reskilling over the life course, especially to keep pace with rapid technological and digital transformations that affect jobs. And all these are critical for women's and girls' well-being, as well as their income generation opportunities and participation in the formal labor market. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Obanda. Honorable Rachel Shebesh, we recognize your presence. Thank you very much. We also recognize the presence of the media that is our partner. We recognize all the he for she present. Asante sana for joining us today. And at the same time, we recognize the presence of our consultant, Lucy Mitei. Thank you very much. From their talks, And from the women that we all admire, Professor Wangari Maathai said, "It is important to nurture any new ideas and initiatives which can make a difference for Africa." Our partners, thank you very much for believing in the dream that KEPSA had and joining us to do all this together. And with that, we'll do a labako. And after, we will be inviting our chair of the sector board, Ms. Mucha, who will take a short time to give us a sneak preview of what we all expect. And then we will continue with the program as fast as we can. Labako is 5 claps, but it has a tune for us to do. And this is to appreciate all our partners and everyone present. Labako is, you've got it, right? Yeah. Sawa. Hey, tumepata. Let's do it because we have to appreciate everyone in the house. Let's go Labako. Ms. Mucha, the floor is yours.
Honorable Jebi Kilimo, Honorable Rachel Shebesh, all protocols observed. I love saying that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure you can see the excitement on my face, and hopefully you can hear it in my voice. I am so delighted that this day has finally come. I am here standing on the shoulders of some really amazing women who went before me, and I am the one who gets to cross the finish line. I am that 4th, you know the relay race? I am the 4th runner who gets to cross the finish line and gets all that applause, knowing full well that there were 3 other runners who came before me. And so allow me as I begin to just appreciate the runners who came before me. Thank you. The concept of gender mainstreaming is gaining momentum in the world with a focus on various gender-sensitive interventions designed to help close the prevailing gender gap in all sectors, thus contributing to the resilience of the economy and the attainment of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially goal number 5 on achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls, which is also envisioned in the national blueprint. As was mentioned before, we are kind of running behind the government, but we are coming. Gender mainstreaming is referred to as the integration of a gender perspective or awareness into how society or an organization operates to ensure that women and men have equitable access to and benefit from resources, opportunities and rewards, and equal participation in influencing decisions. The private sector gender mainstreaming policy aim is to provide practical guidelines for the adoption and implementation of gender mainstreaming in the private sector. It is guided by the principles of gender diversity and inclusion and recognizes that the private sector's policies, programs, and initiatives ought to contribute to the realization of gender equality in Kenya. So allow me to take you quickly through this 7-point gender mainstreaming agenda. Point number 1, gender mainstreaming as part of organizational strategy. The focus on gender mainstreaming must be anchored at the company's board and executive level to ensure support at all organizational levels. Some of the actions that the private sector companies can consider include establishing high-level corporate leadership for gender equality, initiating gender working groups or committees to support the executive in gender mainstreaming efforts, establish gender mainstreaming champions or ambassadors, and ensure, this one is important, gender mainstreaming targets are integrated into the job descriptions of executive staff as well as managers and also included in their work plans and performance evaluations. Incorporate gender-responsive elements in the strategic frameworks and strategic plans to provide a greater rationale for gender responsiveness within the company's programs, policies, and operations, and leverage influence and partnerships to advocate for gender equality and collaborate with business partners, suppliers, and community leaders to promote diversity and inclusion. Number 2, support women and other marginalized groups in the workforce, in business, business associations, and leadership. The private sector companies should strive to foster diversity and inclusion across all levels to promote the transformation of corporate and business culture. Some of the policy recommendations that can be considered to ensure gender parity in the workforce include ensuring that all company positions are thoroughly advertised and that women and other groups are encouraged to apply in categories where they may be underrepresented. Implement affirmative action in recruitment and promotion, where a woman and a man are equally qualified for a position in a category where there is gender imbalance, the underrepresented gender will be given priority. Table gender disaggregated statistics on staff profile per department at leadership meetings to encourage departments where there are gender gaps to fill these gaps and ensure gender balanced selection or interview panels that follow gender-sensitive guidelines drawn up for interviews. To promote gender parity in entry and retention in business, the following options can be explored. Implement enterprise development, supply chain, and marketing practices that empower women. Promote women's entrepreneurship and close the gender finance gap. Support women, youth, and persons with disability and owned MSMEs to access business development services through training, mentoring, information sharing, and networking, and work with partners and stakeholders to review regional trade, economic customs, laws, procedures, regulations, and rules to make them gender equity compliant. Number 3, adopt and implement gender-responsive policies at the workplace. The need to have standalone gender-responsive policies should be embraced to ensure systematic implementation, including well-established targets and means of measurement. Companies should establish a diversity and inclusion policy, which is a way of complying with national laws that prohibit discrimination on various grounds, such as gender, race, ethnic origin, religion, age, or disability. Equal pay for equal value. Equal pay for work of equal value policy, requiring that the work done by women and men is valued equally and that they receive equal pay for work of equal value. Work-life balance policies, the disparity between women and men in care responsibilities has significant ramifications for women economic empowerment. The future of work, the COVID pandemic has reset major work trends and highly impacted the outlook for the labor market and accelerated the implementation of future work concepts. Promoting dignified menstruation in the workplace through menstrual hygiene management support for women employees is also key to promoting workplace equality. Number 4, prevent gender-based violence and harassment. Private sector companies should commit to ending violence and harassment at work and adopt an anti-GBV and sexual harassment policy. The private sector companies should commit to ending this vice. And this should be something that is clear, and there should be a zero-tolerance approach to violence and harassment. More than that, organizations should establish prevention, management, and reporting mechanisms, establish reporting and investigation procedures, ensure the right to privacy and confidentiality, include measures to address violence outside the workplace, institute measures that protect victims, witnesses, and whistleblowers, establish measures to identify and address security issues, including the safety of women traveling to and fro work on company-related business, establish screening of job applicants, and ensure that company products, services, and facilities are not used for perpetuating GBV, such as sexual exploitation. Number 5, promote gender awareness. As a gender mainstreaming method, gender awareness is crucial for integrating a gender perspective into policies, programs, projects, and services that respond to the different needs of women and men. Some of the actions that can be explored to improve gender awareness include managers being trained on how to promote gender diversity and inclusion and encourage gender equality in the workplace. In the work that I do as an emotional intelligence coach, that's my other thing. One of the things we say is that if you have a brain, you have bias. We all have bias. And so we need to be taught to identify those biases and taught how to navigate and disrupt and break those biases. So that should be something that is inbuilt. Let's not assume everyone knows how to break the biases. Build women's confidence, attitudes, and skills to enable them to succeed in leadership, business, and enterprising activities. This enhances their self-awareness and proactiveness in the workplace. Implement gender-related education and training programs to raise employee awareness of gender issues and how these issues impact inter-office relationships. Such trainings help in identifying gender biases, addressing interpersonal relationships, and discouraging discrimination in the workplace, and discouraging sex discrimination in the workplace as well. Incorporate the gender mainstreaming policy and training in the orientation of new staff. Number 6, set clear targets, measure, report, and communicate. What doesn't get measured doesn't get done. The most effective way of developing a case for investing in gender initiatives is collecting and analyzing gender data. This is essential in ensuring programs are developed to meet specific needs and contribute to sustainable outcomes. The following steps can be followed when setting out to set clear targets aimed at achieving gender equality and women empowerment at the workplace. Establish baseline data to identify key gender issues. Design a strategy to put gender diversity and inclusion initiatives into practice. This should be established as part of the company culture and owned at the highest levels of leadership. Draw up an implementation plan that specifies the actions, responsibilities, and timelines required for the implementation of the strategy, and implement gender-sensitive reporting. Last but not least, number 7, implement gender-responsive budgeting and resource mobilization. We need money. The gender budget, which mirrors the priorities of the company, which is why this must sit at the executive and board level, is a key management tool for ensuring that gender mainstreaming is actually taking place. Integrating gender into the budgets shall be need-driven and within the fiscal budgeting framework of the company. Some of the actions that can be implemented to ensure gender actions are well-resourced include dedicating specific budget allocations for gender initiatives such as gender audits, gender analysis, tracking information, and developments on gender reporting, gender capacity enhancement and sensitization. Developing gender budgeting guidelines, which include a requirement for establishing key priority areas, identifying gender opportunities, and justifying the need for these interventions. Embedding gender equality indicators in the job descriptions for the finance team. Implementing or integrate environmental, social, and governance frameworks into the company's operations. Implementing fundraising activities, and establishing partnerships with development agencies. And so this before you is the gender policy that we are excited, elated to launch this evening. And on that note, I hand back over to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mucha. I think we are getting the excitement, and because she's given us the 7 principles from the policy, just to give you a tidbit, and we will do a different celebration. Then I'll invite Ms. Flora to invite our key guest, then we get into the gist of the meeting. Because we all love celebration, let's do this, and we'll just clap. 1. You ready? Are we ready? Let's go. 1. Ms. Flora,
please. Let me avoid this. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to invite our chief guest of our dinner this evening, Jibi Kilimo. Karibu sana. I shall escort you up the stairs.
No, these are just the hills of Marakwet I used to walk. Wow, thank you very much. Good. My colleague, Honorable. So, Honorable Shabesh, my colleague, the chair, let me see this, I was told not to forget, the chairperson of KEPSA, Flora Mutai. I have to go. The KEPSA leadership in the House, the he for she present, the UN lady here, and of course the MasterCard, my CEO of WEF, and many girlfriends of mine I see here. All protocols observed. Good evening. Good evening. Wow. While I was seated there, when you said 7, it reminded me the 7 words that Jesus spoke on the cross. And it finishes, na tuweke sana mioyoni mwetu. So I hope all the private sector will keep those in their hearts. And then finally, the story in Luke chapter 18, that there was this widow who kept on knocking, wanting justice, until the king said, okay. So in this case, it's the other way around. It's like the king, which is the government, kept on knocking. By the way, you could be the king, KEPSA. You know KEPSA because you pay taxes, so you could actually be the king because you pay our salaries from your taxes. That we kept on knocking. We want gender mainstreaming policies. We want people to, all this, and voila, here we are today to celebrate. So it's so nice. And it just reminds me the days when I was the chairperson of KEWOPA and Honorable Shabesh was my secretary. We are just up and down thinking, what else is needed by the women in this country? What else? Then who is going to help us with these women? I think by that time, maybe KEPSA was not there. You could have seen us at your door. And now today we are at your door. Ensure you implement the policy. Wow, so today I stand here humbly on behalf of my cabinet secretary, Professor Margaret Kobia, who has gone to be among the few people present in New York, and the rest of us are here in Kenya. So maybe it is morning on that side or something, or there is another meeting taking place. So this is her speech. Also, on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Gender, Senior Citizens Affairs, and Special Programs, Professor Margaret Kobia, I am extremely delighted to join you at this event. I've seen my villager sitting down there, so he has distracted me. Yes. So right from the onset, I wish to extend our deep appreciation to KEPSA for partnership with our ministry in hosting this meeting, which forms part of the 2 weeks activities of the 66th, I better just say 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. As many of you are aware, every year Kenya participates in the Commission on the Status of Women in New York. However, for the last 2 years, the sessions have been conducted virtually due to COVID-19, thereby limiting the physical participation of member states and delegations to New York. Ideally, this side event should be happening in New York, as is the practice. Nevertheless, as a country, we have ensured that despite challenges posed by the pandemic, the gender discourse remains alive with many lessons learned and opportunities identified to accelerate efforts towards the achievement of gender equality and empowerment of women and girls.